Great to be with you. Thanks for joining us for Leaving Your Legacy Stories about Homeownership. And today we have a little bit of additional spin on what we're doing with our podcast. We, in the past, have focused on real estate professionals and homeowners and things of that nature. And today we're broadening that out a little bit because of the nature of what's happening in the world and the stability that we're looking for in homeownership. And so homeownership provides an amazing stability, but within the realms of that, there are also services that are needed, like, for instance, living trust. There's attorney services. And there's one service in particular that I'm really intrigued with, and that is insurance. This particular podcast, we're going to focus on someone who's very versed in health insurance. And health is such a big deal because it allows us to continue to make the payments so that we can live in our homes and eventually be able to pay those homes off. And what's interesting is that we need our health. And it's amazing to me, the reports that I've read, the research that I've done that shows that a lot of people are really underinsured when it comes to health insurance. They don't really know what the benefits are. And most of all, they're really not taking advantage of what they could be taking advantage of because they really don't know what's out there. And so today what we have is a special guest, Nicole Crutcher, who has been in the health insurance and benefits industry for over 25 years. She has two children, 13 and 18, and happily married here in the Canal Valley. She's amazing. And the reason I wanted to bring her on today was to talk a little bit about her story, because she's got an amazing story that ties in with homeownership. But also, it's really important that we have an understanding of what she does and how that helps bring stability to a home environment. So, Nicole, it's great to be with you today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's great. And you have been just great. You're in my Provisors group, and we have had the opportunity to sit next to each other. And I've always loved your presentation. And then when I started learning a little bit about your story, I thought I really need to have Nicole because she's got a great story.
Oh, thank you.
So tell me a little bit about what is happening right now in your industry.
Well, so health insurance, first of all, is something that is always changing. And literally from the government, COVID, new laws that come into play, really it's something that is always evolving. But what never changes is that we all need access to healthcare. So when we get sick, where do we go?
And the problem that I see is that when we don't have it, that's when we have a real problem.
Right. Or life changes occur and we don't know where to get it anymore.
So what kind of life changes would you say?
Well, so for example, perhaps you're losing a job or you're switching from working your entire life to suddenly consulting. What are your insurance options? What are the best ones to use? And there's a variety from COBRA to an individual plan to getting coverage through a spouse. If you're the right age, Medicare, which is just a whole nother,
And where do you think that people need the most help when it comes to understanding the benefits? Because I'm really, I'm just changing to Medicare right now, and I'm really going through this process, and I'm really beginning to understand how important it is for my longevity,
right,
so that I can stay in my home. Because the last thing I want to do is go to assisted living. I do not want to do that. I want to be strong and healthy, and being able to go to the doctor or functional type medicine that is a little bit different,
right,
is a really big deal right now.
Right.
And so what are the biggest challenges that you're seeing right now?
So what really keeps me in business is exactly that, the challenges when people have a life change. So what are my options? How expensive are they? How do I get them? What do I qualify for? What's best for my family? And then also, once I have the insurance, how do I use it? What is the deductible? Do I want something that has a health savings account attached to it? Is that beneficial to my family? Most people work their whole life and don't realize what insurance they've been getting or how beneficial it was to them until they suddenly have to pay for it themselves. And then it's just a shock, oh my goodness, and then they can get into the nitty gritty and they need somebody who really understands the details of it to I'm almost like an accountant. Go through and let's look at what are your claims like? Are you healthy? Do you have a particular provider you have to use? And all of those things play into what options are best for you and your family.
So give me an example of what that's like. Because for me, I'm finding as I get older that I have different parts of my body that I never knew existed. It's crazy because, as you get older, things start breaking down a little bit.
For sure.
So give me an example of what that would look like of what you just described.
Well, so what's tricky about health insurance, and I think the landscape of health insurance, it hasn't changed enough in that, like you mentioned, functional medicine or, many people use a lot of alternative therapies now, especially when it comes to mental health, even pain. And a lot of those things are either, if they're covered by the insurance, they're out of network, or maybe they're just not covered by the insurance at all. And so there's a big area of insurance that is just not covering what we're using and spending on a day-to-day basis. That's above and beyond like the emergency room.
Yeah.
It's how do we keep well? And so what are some strategies that we can use? A big one is a health savings account. So if you have a high deductible plan that can attach a health savings account to it, that enables us a little bit of flexibility to put money away and at least use tax-free dollars to pay for things that are outside of what our plan covers.
Yeah.
So as long as it falls within the guidelines of the IRS and it's like a massage or something that's prescribed by a doctor, even if it's not covered under our plan, it can still be covered under the HSA. So that's a great way to, get some tax benefit and still cover the things that are important. And I myself, my family, we use a tremendous amount of providers and services that are just not covered by our plan at all. So we use the health savings account to help with those things. That's a big benefit for people who are under 65.
Right. So can you give me an example of a person that's been covered or that there's been some life changes that you've actually helped recently?
Oh my gosh. It's like every day. Just off the top of my head, it could be anything from sudden divorce or death. I just was working with a woman whose husband unexpectedly, he was healthy, he got COVID, but still, this just happened. He got COVID and died 3 days later. And he was only in his 50s. And, he was really the main breadwinner, although she definitely can go out and make her own income. But she was so grief-stricken that she just was stuck, so she really needed somebody that could, calm down. She said, I've been on my husband's plan. What do I do? And turned out she was over 65. We were able to convert her right into a Medicare supplement. She was very concerned. She gets the shots in your eye for macular degeneration. And she was not wanting to switch her providers. And, we were able to calm down, explain. I said, let's just call your provider. They were thrilled she was going on to a Medicare supplement instead of staying on the existing plan. She had a daughter, who was still covered under the plan because they're so young. The daughter's going to school out of state. Well, that was another tricky thing because the individual plans in California won't really cover except for emergencies out of state. So we wanted to keep the daughter on COBRA so that she could keep her benefits while she was out of state. It was with United Healthcare. So, that's just a perfect example of something. Sometimes it's coming and we can have a conversation well ahead of time and sort of lead to it. But sometimes it happens and I get a phone call, maybe it's your client and it's or somebody close to you and you're suddenly like, oh my gosh, I don't know all the options. She doesn't know all the options. I need an expert in here that can just help us understand, calm down, understand what we need and what our options are, and then have a plan.
Well, the thing that's really impressive to me is that every time I've reached out to you for help, you've always been there. And it's like there's not this big expectation that you've got to do business.
Right.
And the fact that you actually have somebody who will come to you, a client, because I think about health insurance and I think, well, we get it and there's no really attached to it. But in your case, there is somebody attached to it.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
And that is what I would say that's more of you, Nicole, than I have seen in the past, where individuals are just, it's more transactional. You seem to be really in on helping each individual.
Oh, well, that is absolutely what I love about what I do. I'm like you said, I'm almost 25 years in the business, and I've spent a lot of time working with big companies and doing employee benefits and working with HR teams. And what I have found is where I get the joy is working with employees or with an individual one-off. And so now that I, have children and I'm able to, scale my business to be what I want it to be, I'm able to spend time and focus on the areas that I want. And so I really do feel like I attract clients from my peers that are people who are like me, who really just need an education, who want the right. Sometimes they'll come to me and I'm telling them to do something that is not even going to make me money ever, or I'm sending them to another person.
Yeah.
But that really makes me feel good. And sometimes I'll have someone like you that will say, hey, is this even what you do? Are you willing to talk to this person? And also, of course, and if it makes you look good, then it's even better because now we both are helping somebody.
Right.
And I'm a big believer in what goes around comes around. And
okay, so let's talk about that for a minute. So you came up with this idea that you like to help.
uh-huh.
So I want to find out a little bit more about your background. Where does the desire to help come from?
Well,
Because that's pretty unusual. There's nothing really attached to it. It's just that I'm here to help. So where do you think in your upbringing did that happen?
I think it was really from my family. That was my role in our family. My dad was in insurance. I grew up in working in his business as a part-time job. So our whole family was connected in that way. When I was about 10 years old, he got cancer. And really, as a 10-year-old, my mom had just had another baby. So as a 10-year-old, I was suddenly a second mom, a little one, but a little second mom.
Are you the oldest?
I'm the oldest.
Okay.
And then also, I remember I would help my dad with accounting for his company or filing or things like that. And my role, I think as often a lot of oldest children are, is sort of a caretaker. And, what made me feel good was when I was able to help somebody and make them feel good. And that just
what
carried.
happened with your father with his cancer?
So he was 35, he had Hodgkin's. And it was right at a point in time where they could cure Hodgkin's. So he went through chemotherapy, was 100% cured, and he's 73.
Wow.
Yeah. And I played golf with him yesterday.
How about that? And so you're really focused on the individual, even though you do group plan.
100%. Yeah. Right.
All right. So let's go. So let's stay in your upbringing here, because I find that really interesting. So tell me a little bit more about when you were growing up. You were the head of kind of the second mom. What happened to progress your life a little bit?
I was always, a characteristic was just always very observant. And my mom will tell a story where they'll be shopping for a car and I just out of the blue, I'll be like, well, why are you looking at that car? Why wouldn't you look at the minivan or something, that just made sense, very practical. And my parents would be like, oh, you're 10? Yes, that makes total sense. And then they buy a minivan or just something like that. But I just always was very pragmatic, very responsible. And just...
Well, and now let me stop you, because that really shows you're not afraid to bring things up. Because most 10-year-olds don't say, oh, no, I think I ought to do this. But you had the confidence to be able to do that. So tell me about that. I mean, that's that's my parents fostered that. They really encouraged us to speak up. They always treated us like adults. They never said we couldn't do something. It really was more a matter of, if you want to do something, how are you going to do it? Let's make a plan. Just figure it out.
Yeah, it just never occurred to me that I might not be able to be president or something like that. It's just
right.
Okay, what's the plan that we need to do to make it happen?
And so when you brought things up, you didn't feel any judgment or restraint on that. You just were you're living in an environment where you could really go for it.
Absolutely. Really go for it, but also very practical. Like if something didn't make sense, I would be like, what's your thought on that? Maybe let's brainstorm. Maybe we can come up with a better plan,
That's huge. That's huge to me. And the reason why I think that it translates into the success that you've had. I think it translates into the idea that you're willing to tell clients or to advise them on what's really needed.
Right.
You know, you're not just out there to say, well, I need to say this so I get this money or I get this deal or I close this deal.
Absolutely.
It's really based on, no, this is the way it is,
Right.
right? From a practical standpoint that people can actually live with and survive with.
Right. And it's really just about everybody will say, what plan should I buy? I get that question all the time. Which plan is the best for me?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I need to ask you 10 questions, and then you need to tell me what plan is best for you. I mean, really, it's just guiding somebody.
So what would be some of those questions?
Are you healthy? Do you have any health conditions that require a specific doctor? Do you have a family? How much can you afford? Are you financially savvy? Do you care when you go to the doctor if the bill is $150 or does it need to be 10? Do you have to be able to pick your doctor, or are you okay letting somebody say, pick from these 3 and that's your choice? Those kinds of things. I mean, everybody has a different perspective on what's important to them. And then we, fine tune, okay, what's available that meets most of their needs. And if there's something that is new, I might suggest, I bring HSA up often because it's something that
What does HSA?
HSA is a health savings account.
Okay.
You have to have a certain kind of plan to be able to have one of those. And I feel that you need to be a little more invested. You need to be savvy. You need to not be afraid of getting a bill. You need to understand the finances.
Yeah.
And I find a lot of times maybe one person in the family is okay with that, but not the other one. And the one who is getting care is freaked out when they have to pay a $500 bill or they're unexpected. Everybody really needs to buy it. It's a partnership. If a husband and wife are both in it, they need to understand what's going on. It takes a lot of explanation. And I do a lot of educating on it, even when somebody doesn't take it, because I want them to know about it.
Yeah. And it's interesting because when I get bills or when I get summaries of visits and things like that, I'm going, I don't even know what
Right.
this is.
Right.
I have no idea.
Right.
And so you really help walk them through
Right.
so that they understand what's going on.
Right.
And
yeah. And I do also, a lot of educating for people about what are other options. Maybe the insurance paid it at $100, but did you ask if there's a cash rate? It might be less at the pharmacy or at the MRI facility.
yeah.
Is that always the best way to go? No. But sometimes it's a good alternative. And it's really about knowing what questions to ask and getting ideas. I mean, I geek out on this. I totally geek out on insurance. It's ridiculous. Like, everybody rolls their eyes.
Give me an example of what that's like.
Well, exactly this, bring your explanation of benefits and let's figure out why, who paid what. Let's see if there was a deductible. Did it go towards it? I'm kind of like, when you get miles and everybody's like, oh, I need a miles expert to figure out how to get the free upgrade.
Yeah.
I feel like health insurance is exactly the same in that
So
sense.
there's a ton of options there that I don't know about. Most people don't
And
know
tips and tricks and things to look for. And yes, exactly. Just from experience and just from being in it forever. And we all make the same mistakes. The worst thing that happens is we have a health situation ourselves. And even me, when I go to the doctor and I'm just stunned because my child is sick and whatever they say, I'm going to do.
Yeah.
But if I could just step back for a second, I have to also say, where they're sending me, is that in my plan? And if it's not in my plan, what's the best way for me to get care for that? And do I really want to do that? Yes, no, yes, I do. Oh, or no, I don't. It really stops all of us in our tracks, though, when someone's sick and we forget to ask those questions. And so I feel that it's just something that every enrollment meeting I do with a group of employees, I bring up. Make sure you're talking to your doctor about, is the blood place in network? Do you really need, that MRI? Is there an x-ray that you should have first? Or, just dental insurance. Oh my gosh, don't even get me started on dental insurance. It's just like that. A dentist might say, John, you need $5,000 worth of work in your mouth. And you're like, what? It feels fine.
Right.
I don't feel like there's anything wrong.
Yeah.
Do you really need how do you know? You treat your dentist like a doctor. So
It's kind of like going to the auto mechanic when they say you're going to be fixed. It's like, well, I don't understand anything about it.
Except for that a dentist is more like a doctor and you're more just going to do whatever they say. So don't get me wrong. I love my dentist. I trust him. But I do see a lot of situations where people are getting a little bit snowed by extra services in the dental market. And the dental insurance is not like health insurance where it just covers you unlimited. It's a very limited benefit. So I do suggest shopping around. Shop your dentist.
Yeah.
If you're not completely sure that this is something that you need to take care of, or it seems iffy. I have story after story where you go to someone else and suddenly you don't need it anymore. I'm not saying that it never happens.
No, I know.
You don't need it, but it just have to be.
You see, I was not aware of that. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so as you progress through your life, what was the inflection point that caused you to go in this direction? Because I know that you were with your dad for a few years.
Right.
But there had to be a time when Nicole had to grow up and say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And what was that?
Well, so if you back up for a second, so I grew up and I went to Westlake High School. I walked down Lakeview Canyon to my dad's office every day after school and I answered the phones and did filing. That was my job.
Okay.
So when I graduated, I was like, I do not want to do insurance. So boring. Why would anybody do this? I'm out of here. I want to go be in marketing. I want to travel. So I did that. Right out of college, I got a marketing degree, traveled all over, got married. And then about 5 years into my marriage, my husband and I wanted to settle down. I was sick of traveling. We bought a house. We moved back to Thousand Oaks.
I want to hear about that.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That was a big driver. And then I was working here and I knew we wanted to have children and I just couldn't have the kind of job that I had. And I wanted something that was just not so, I don't know, like transactional, I guess. Just, I wanted something that just was more meaningful.
Yeah.
So,
a little more fulfilling.
Then my dad was still working here in Westlake, and I said, what if I came to work with you part-time and I could just help you service? I don't want to sell. I'll help you service. I'm great at detail. I'm great at numbers.
That was life insurance.
That was life insurance. But he also had a group insurance arm that another person ran. And as soon as I started working with him, we just clicked. We didn't realize how well we would work together.
Uh-huh.
And immediately I became full-time and I immediately took over his group insurance business.
Wow.
And so he ran the life side and I ran the group side. And then about 4 years ago, now my family life is very busy and my husband works a lot and my dad was nearing retirement. And I said, I need things. I was doing a lot of large group companies and I needed things to be smaller and something that I can manage on my own. I didn't want a big office anymore. And so I made the decision to let go of a lot of my large clients. And now today I have only small companies under 100 employees. And I do Medicare supplements, and I do a tremendous amount of consulting and educating for my clients and my peers who have family, friends, and employees that just need help with health insurance.
Yeah.
And it's very rewarding, and it makes me feel good at the end of the day.
So let's tie that in just a little bit. 'Cause, I just think that that's so valuable to find somebody who will give you the time to do that. It's just amazing to me.
Well, it's a definite hole. There are people out there that do that. And the reason they don't do that is because insurance agents don't really make much on an individual policy. And so usually people in that category are looking at an individual policy. So
interesting.
Health insurance brokers typically are after businesses where the insurance companies pay more, or on the Medicare supplement side where they pay more. And that's how we all maintain our businesses. But that individual market has been tricky because they really stripped out the commissions for agents. And so now specialists who used to be individual specialists just are very hard to find. And so finding somebody, for me, it's somewhat of a niche because when you work with a small business, you're working with a business owner who's probably going to age into Medicare. Small businesses have different rules than large businesses in terms of insurance and the technicalities of navigating. So when somebody comes to me, I'm looking at, can they stay in the small business? Can they start a small business? Are they Medicare eligible? Or do we need to go to an individual plan? And you kind of have to know all of those things in order to really be able to help someone. And I find that there just aren't that many people to go to that can help in all areas.
That can do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so not only you do group, but you do individual as well.
I do it because it's necessary in that conversation.
Wow.
But I certainly, like I said, there isn't a lot of compensation for that. So I'm not like, hey, I sell individual. That's a very tough market. So it's a kind of an adjunct to servicing my clients and servicing more than, I consider my peers to be like my clients. Mm-hmm. And so that I can help them to the extent that I can help their family and friends or their clients, it all
makes a big difference.
Works out. Yeah.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about, we want to come back and tie this in a little bit to homeownership. And when I was talking to you about that previously before our interview here, tell me about your experience with homeownership, your first home, and what caused you to buy a home, and what it's done for you, and kind of what your experience has been.
Really, homeownership is really kind of at the crux of what my husband and I, a lot of our life decisions were based around buying a home. So
tell me about that.
So we both started our careers up in the Silicon Valley in the mid to late 90s. And my husband is a diehard fixer-upper, wants to remodel everything. And so we tried to buy a house in Northern California during the height of the Silicon Valley and high interest rates. And neither of us were making a lot of money. And we would go to buy a house that was maybe $200,000 or $250,000, and it would be bid up to $500,000 just every time. And together collectively, we were maybe making $80,000 a year.
Oh wow!
This is in the old days.
Yeah.
So we were getting married, and we kept coming down to Southern California. And Raytheon, I think, had just pulled out of this market. In Thousand Oaks.
Yeah.
The defense industry had just pulled out, and so you could still buy a house here for under $200,000.
Wow.
So we found a house, and we said, you know what? I guess we're moving to Southern California because this is where we can accomplish what we want to do. We want to buy a house.
Wow. So buying a home was the driver of you moving down.
Absolutely. Yep.
Wow.
Yep. So we found a house.
That's a big priority.
It was huge, and it was.
So why didn't you just step there and rent? Just say, well, we'll just step here and rent. I mean, why would you drive to have all the way to Southern California just to buy a house?
Oh, well, because first of all,
because that really puts a premium on why homeownership is so important.
Right. Well, we really saw it as another business for us, something outside of not just our home, but something, we didn't have kids yet. It was really something that we both wanted to do, that we liked to do. But we also knew the value of it as an investment. And so we knew if we could build up some equity that we would, we had our eye on a bigger prize, and our idea was that we would remodel and move and hopefully get into the neighborhood where it was a property that was something that we really wanted.
Yeah.
So that's really, my husband, I think if he had the choice, he might have even done that as a career. So, and his family, a lot, again, comes from his family. His family, they invested in a lot of properties and rentals, and he even had one uncle who built spec houses. So certainly was around it a lot. But
and have you found that so basically what you've done is you bought, you fixed up, you sold, you bought again,
right,
to really get to what you wanted.
Right. And it wasn't like we had money. I mean, we lived in it while we did the work. I literally stripped cabinets in my kitchen. It wasn't like we had brand new cabinets installed. We did all of the work.
And what's the results of that been?
We're on our fourth house. We have one of them we sold. We didn't sell it. We turned it into a rental property. Now it's become such a passion that the newest project is so big that I'm hoping we never finish it, so that we don't have to keep moving, because it has turned into something that my husband does on the weekends to relax. Even though it's hard work, it's what he does. He's a CEO. It's what he does to get out of his brain in terms of work. So it's been great. And I would tell this story because I'm just laughing at where interest rates are right now. You'll appreciate this. But our first house was $210,000. I think maybe together we were making about $80,000, and our interest rate was 8 3/4. Our mortgage was like more than we were paying. It was more than we even pay now, and our house now is worth almost $2 million, right? Like, what is going on? And I hear young people talk about, how expensive it is, and I'm like, interest rates are going up, but they're still not where we were. I mean, really, if you buckle down, and that's what we did. We really buckled down. We used any discretionary income to put back into the house. That's been a game changer for us. We've always been able to cash flow our own remodels. And we've been successful, but really just because of hard work.
Interesting. So no secrets.
No secrets and no special trust fund, which I keep hoping it'll come one day, but now it's kind of late.
Yeah. So you made a comment earlier that as a homeowner, you didn't have to keep looking. What did you mean by that? In other words, you don't have to worry about renting as a homeowner.
Right. So the best part about, I think, about being a homeowner is that, you always are safe. You don't know or worried about where you're going to sleep the next night, even if it's a mess because you've been remodeling. You always have a roof over your head. And so our worry was never about where we were going to live. It was just about the condition of what we were living in, But I think we rented when we first got married for maybe 5 months, and we just felt like we were throwing money away. We wanted our money to go into our house. Yeah.
What caused it? What was the driving force behind that?
Behind having to rent?
No, well, behind saying, wait a minute, I don't want to throw money away.
Well,
because a lot of people, it's really interesting because we have millennials and we have who are phenomenal because they're well educated, they make great money, and many of them are buying homes. There's also a segment of them that really aren't quite sure what's going on, and they're a little bit concerned about the interest rate. Although they're educated and they're sharp, it's just that because the rates have gone up so fast, they tend to think, well, the rates are so high. And that's what Gen Z and with all the others that we're working on. And yet they don't realize that they're paying 100% interest rate right now. By renting, every single penny is going to somebody else's, that they're buying real estate, but they're buying it for somebody else.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So we always felt put the money into our own house. If we're going to pay somebody, we might as well pay ourselves.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So I don't know. It's been very rewarding to have something that we, not only do we own it, but what it is a reflection of who we are, because we've worked hard to either put more money into it or make it something better or sell it and move on, whatever it was. We've done well with that. It's been at the end of the day, those are the home remodeling piece is something that makes us feel more, I think, even more successful than what we do in our jobs.
Wow.
It's a reflection of us.
Yeah. Yeah. Of that extra effort.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, even if you can, change your own toilet out, if you could do that, like that is so rewarding. I know that sounds so dumb, but it's really, it's a huge confidence builder. And I see it with our kids. Our kids are not like loving painting when we have a painting job, but they're not afraid to be like, hey, I want to paint my room. Where's the paint can? I'll go get the paintbrush. Like it's not a question of how do you do it? It's just where's the stuff and let me get it done.
Wow.
So
that's huge.
So we feel like we've really, taught our children too that you can do anything.
Right.
So what's the worst that can happen? You have to do it again?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, that's not comfortable, but.
Well, I think that's a great way to raise kids. It's great to be able to have them work and be responsible for that. I mean, that's huge.
Yeah.
So really, when you're talking about homeownership, you're talking about all of the aspects that go with it, which include your children, the learning that comes from that, and of course, the stability so that you can continue working.
Right. It's not just a place where you live, right? It's a family project. We all contribute. It's a home is not just where you live, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's huge just in that sense itself. It's interesting that you talked about that because people that own homes, there's a 50% less chance that they get divorced.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I believe that because you're in it. It's sort of like having a child also, right? You're going to try to stick it out more because you're invested.
And you've got to have a great relationship with your husband because when you're doing remodels, it's like, oh my word, I need this.
We have a very strong relationship. A lot of boundaries, a lot of rules about when you're allowed to work, when you're allowed to put the drill on top of the countertop. You have to, it forces you to have conversations that maybe wouldn't come up so quickly.
Like, well, it could be an example.
Like, for example, I don't want to work 7 days a week. My husband would love to work all the time because that's his hobby. He wants to do that. And I might like to go somewhere on the weekend and not, even the kids, baseball game or whatever.
Right.
And so you have to very quickly get on the same page about compromise, and we still want to push forward with what we're doing, but we also need to be on the same page about what are we doing as a family. You know, do we need to have rest and have time where it's not just about finishing, right? You know,
About the process, right?
right. I said we're in a house that I never want to finish, because when we're finished, then we're done, right?
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's all about all of the along the way. And I'm just not in a rush. And
You know, that's interesting because that also applies to what you're doing with your work, you know, because it's really a journey, right? And there's no real destination in insurance. I mean, it's like continually things always come up.
right.
And you have had, because the one thing that is really interesting to me about home remodeling, because that's something that I'm not really handling, right? And the thing that's so interesting is that when you do a lot of remodeling, you know how to figure it out and solve problems.
Right.
And I think that has a direct correlation. Now, you know, I'm not a statistician here. I'm not saying that this is correlation, but I'm saying that there's a pretty strong correlation that when you're doing a lot of your own handiwork, you're able to figure out life's problems, because there's always issues. I've never had, even my own handyman that's come over and done some work for us, you know, something always comes up.
Right.
Right. So there's always a problem. There's always a challenge. There's always something that comes up,
100%.
and you have to figure it out.
Yep. That is my job all day long. How can we find you exactly what you need, the right time? Maybe I'm just helping you find a doctor. Maybe people come to me for like the craziest different things. But yeah, I mean, where I'm at today, I've taken all my experience, and what I really want to do is just keep working and keep helping people. And I'm really not, it's not about the transaction anymore.
Yeah.
It used to be I had to, you know, make a certain amount of money, and that's just part of having a career, right? That's important.
Yeah.
But today it's a lot more that comes just as a benefit of what I'm doing. And I feel that I'm in a place where, luckily, I'm able to just not worry about, you know, if I get the deal or I don't get the deal. It's really more about, like, are we solving problems? And also the connections. I mean, look at this connection that we have. I didn't even know you before, you know, I started with my work and trying to build my, you know, networking and build my, I feel that Provisors has been a great avenue for me to get out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
And talk to people that are not in my industry, and talk to people that I don't even know, and talk about myself. I don't think I've ever done that. I'm here to help you. Why am I talking about myself?
Right.
So,
because your story is really important.
Yes, but also it makes me uncomfortable to talk about, you know, or, you know, and I think that it's important for people to get out of their comfort zone and to learn to be able to talk in front of people. I mean, I've always been able to talk in front of people. That's what I do. But to talk about myself is tricky.
Yeah.
You know? But what has been so amazing for me out of Provisors is meeting people who are in a very similar business. I feel like, yes, I don't do mortgages, but we're very much aligned in terms of we're helping people. We are doing something that is literally critical to their survival and to their family. It's pivotal, right? And what we do, it's so important that if your clients have so much trust in you, I know they do, they have so much trust in you when it comes to getting a deal done, and this is their life savings and where they're living. And if you say, oh my gosh, you're having a problem with your health insurance, you need to call Nicole. Anything I do, it completely reflects on you.
Yeah.
And vice versa. If I refer you somebody, and it completely, I mean, these small businesses that we have, we are so invested in our clients that, you know, anything we say or referrals that we give, it really is so meaningful to them because they trust us. And, you know, that's what makes, I feel, these relationships that we have, and like you and I have, so important, because I know if I send you somebody that you're going to treat them the same way I would treat one of my clients. And very few people do that.
Yeah.
You know, I want to know that they're going to call them back right away, that they're going to give them top priority, even if they're not going to get the sale, right? Like, they're going to help me figure it out, because they're helping me just as much as they're helping my client. And that comes from our relationship.
Right.
And that connection.
Wow, that's excellent. That's great. So how do people get a hold of you?
They have to know somebody who knows me. Internet, really, it's word of mouth. It's really, My clients are not, I'm not going for everyone. I'm going for someone who's special. I'm going for,
Yeah.
people who are either a client, a friend, or related to somebody that's in my circle.
Okay.
So if you come to me with one of your clients that's having a situation, let me know.
Yeah.
I'm happy to help, even if it's not a sale.
So how would they contact you?
Email's always great.
Okay.
I give my cell phone out, so
Okay.
cell phone, email, that's always the best.
Okay. And the company name is?
Nicole Crutcher Insurance. So Nicole is my maiden name.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Well, it has been a wonderful pleasure. I mean, this is great.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got so much depth in what you're doing and what you've done to help people. I think it's not only exemplary, but I think it's obvious that people are very fortunate to be able to work with you.
Oh, thank you very much.
I would really encourage people to call you. That would be great.
Well, it's most important to me that you feel that you could call me or that your clients could call me. That means everything.
Yeah. So, Nicole, you said that you had some questions for me.
I do. I am very interested in how you got started in your business.
Interesting. Well, I'll tell you what happened is I started, we lived in Utah for a little while after I graduated from BYU. And I really felt like I wanted to come back to California, where I'm from. I'm from San Luis Obispo.
Mm-hmm.
And so we decided to come back to Southern California. And I went ahead and decided to get into the mortgage business because I felt like it was a business that would allow me to be able to help a lot of people, to see a lot of people. And there's always been a connection with me for homeownership because I grew up in the projects. I grew up on welfare when I was a teenager. And sometimes I didn't want to have my friends come over because I was so embarrassed where I lived.
Wow.
My mother was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis when I was 12.
Oh.
So I really spent, I was a quasi caregiver to her. I was the youngest of 4 kids. And so I was the one that was around the most.
Right.
And so growing up in an environment like the projects really told me that's not what I wanted in life.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I just, my mom would continually drag me to church. And over time, it was like, okay, you can achieve, you can do things, because it's more of a positive environment. And so I got this idea that I could do things. And so I graduated from school. And after I graduated, I started with Citicorp and did very well with them with the mortgages. And then it was time for me to go out and form my own business. And at that time, I had the opportunity to go into business with a good friend, Joni Young. And so we did that. And that's how it really took off. And so the passion is really to help people understand that they can buy when usually they don't, or it's to really help them and give them the individual time of mapping out a strategy so that they can. And what I find most of all is that people can do so much more than they give themselves credit for, when it comes to like what you're doing on your refurbishing your homes and things like that. I mean, there is so much potential. I've had people come to me where this gal came to me and she said, I want to buy a home. It cost $1 million. I looked at her income documentation. I said, no, there's absolutely no way you don't qualify. And then I said, but let's try. Let's see what can be done.
Right.
Let's really work towards it because sometimes we get deals that are really difficult.
Right.
And they've been turned down by other lenders. And sure enough, in 90 days, she was in the house. And she could afford it because she moved all of her businesses to the house. So she no longer paid business rent. See, people automatically think that helping people get into a home means that something's shady going on or they can't make the payments. That's just not the case. They got to be able to responsibly buy the home and be able to pay for it. It's just that there are so much more resources that they have they don't realize until they start calling on those resources, whether it's parents or whoever it might be.
So you're really looking at everything in their life to see what things you can pull from to help them achieve what they wanted.
Right.
So when things are difficult, what are some, besides just, I know you could write a loan. I know that.
Right.
What are some of the alternative things? Like what if like this house that we bought, the lender didn't want to lend us based on the condition of the house. So then what do you do?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I mean, and that's why it really takes the expertise. That's why it might be an intermediate loan. It might be a construction loan. It might be off what's called a home style loan, where there's work that has to be done, and you put it into the loan. We had an individual who wanted to have a swimming pool, and so we put it in the sales price and actually financed it through the deal. So there are lots of things that can be done. It's just that people don't ask the questions.
Right.
And so the key is for people to ask the questions. And when it comes to what you're working on with your health insurance, it really has a lot to do with what the people's condition is financially, because a lot of times there's resources there that they don't know about.
Right.
And so we had a gal that was it COVID. She did a forbearance because she couldn't make the payments. She lost her job as a college professor because, I mean, COVID,
Right.
it was out. Then her partner died. And so she hadn't made any payments for like 3 years, right? And she was older. She lived in a home. She had a lot of equity in it. And one day she called me and she said, hey, I got this notice of something about my house being sold. And come to find out,
Oh my gosh.
the lender was foreclosing on her, and her house was going to go to sell on the courthouse steps. And so we jumped in, we got it stayed, which is amazing that we would even do that in the first place. We've got great team members. Diana, who is our lead underwriter processor, is amazing. And we got that stayed. We got her a reverse mortgage. And so now she's at a $1 million+ home, makes no payments, doesn't have to worry about being evicted from her house.
Oh man.
So it's life-changing,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
It's life-changing what can be done if you just figure it out.
Right. And I know that you wrote a book, and I know you've talked, I've heard little snippets here and there about some of your, not just observations, but research and statistics on, because I know when you're always asking the question, the value of having a home, like, okay, what has driven you? I mean, I'm sure your upbringing, but how do you see the psychological side of owning a house?
Okay. That's a great question. And that's really where the rubber meets the pavement, right? Because there's the financial. Everybody always talks about the financial. So a survey was done that showed that the average renter has a net worth of $6,000, right? The average homeowner has an average net worth or median net worth of $230,000.
Wow.
So it's a 46 times difference. So right there, the financial aspects are part of it. But someone buying their first home or moving up or down, they don't really want to hear about that because, it doesn't mean that much to them. So I did some research on that. I said, well, what else does it mean? And I came up with this idea that homeownership is a sacred trust. And not so much in a religious sense, although it can be, but it's more in a sense that says, if you take care of it, it will take care of you. And homes do that because they appreciate it. It's one of the few things that you can go into debt for, and that commodity actually increases in value, right? And when you start putting work into it, like what you've done, it even increases it more. And so as soon as I got that, I thought, okay, this is really something, because now what we have is what are the other issues? And that's why I brought up that if you own a home, there's a 50% chance less that you'll get divorced.
Right.
There's a direct correlation between people owning homes and their voting records, and whether or not they vote.
Wow.
There is children do better in school, generally speaking. There's less teen pregnancy. There's less truancy. I mean, the benefits are what I call the soft belly of owning a home.
And those benefits are because of the stability within the family because of owning a home? Why do you think that?
Well, I think a lot of it has to be with stability. See, a lot of people talk about the idea, well, again, get my act together so I can buy a home. I need to be responsible so I can buy a home. Well, that's not always the case. There's a lot of responsible people that are rent, right? But it might be for various different reasons that they do that. So I don't make any judgment of that at all, because it might be for some reason. However, if they want stability in their life, if they want to be able to know that they're not going to get a call from their landlord that says we're going to sell, right? Or they're not going to be able to put the freaking nail in the wall because because they're going to have to move. Right. And all of a sudden you have this, the stability. And so when people don't own a home, their next, it seems to be psychological to where they think to themselves, I've got to buy a home.
Right.
And then once they buy that home, it seems to clear the path for everything else in life that they want to do.
True.
And it just seems to be a powerful area in people's life. And the reason why I have gone to a deeper level is because normally speaking, people aren't very interested in mortgages. I mean, it's not it's not an interesting subject. But when it leads to the aspect of what it does in a person's life for a stability, all of a sudden it becomes, hey, this is really important.
Right.
And there's a high probability that I can do it. I didn't think I could, but now I can.
Right. And that isn't a conversation you hear ever, right? Really, I think it should be talked about more, and people do need to understand. It's just not something.
Right.
I mean, get the word out there.
It's really life transforming. That's why we call it transforming lives through homeownership.
Yeah.
It gives you a perspective and some stability that you're not going to get anywhere. And the cool thing about it is that if it's your first home, you have to step up generally to be able to do everything to do that.
Right.
And if you already own a home, the beauty is, and this is really interesting to me, is that in the right whole environment, you can move your life forward. And that's what's so interesting about your work and the fact that you've done so much remodeling, because you have remodeled your home to the extent to where you can have the environment that you want.
Right.
And that is the big key, because children who grow up in homes that are rented are 8 to 15% less likely to own a home than those individuals who grow up in homes that where their parents own the home.
Right.
And their lives are much different. For individuals or children that grow up in rentals, parents it's really tough for them. It's really tough for them because it comes more from a victim standpoint, and it's hard because there's no other choices that they have, which makes it really difficult. So, don't put that hole in, don't put the nail in the wall because we're going to have to move. Well, that tells the child that I'm not stable. Or, the landlord's too cheap to fix the toilet, so we got to do it.
Right.
Or the rent is going up. It's always something where you're being acted on instead of acting yourself. And the homeownership, what that does is it solves that issue. So it's no longer, I'm the one that's in control.
Right.
Right. And that's what that does. And that's what I did not want when I was going projects. It was like, this is not the environment that I want.
And not unlike owning your own business versus working for someone else. I mean, not exactly the same, but it's a similar set of issues.
Yeah, that's right.
So, okay, last question. Why the podcast, and how are you using this in your business?
I want to do the podcast because I want to get it out there. I want to get out the idea of the legacy that homeownership provides. And it's not just a legacy after you're dead. It's a legacy while you're alive because you're moving your life forward with it.
Right.
And there's also intergenerational wealth that comes from it. And I really want to help people understand the soft side as well as the financial aspects of owning a home. It's a much bigger deal than people give it credit for. Even people who own homes, a lot of them, when you start sitting down with them and saying, okay, this is why did you buy a home? This is the results of what happened. And this is what my life has been like. I mean, their life is totally different as a result of it.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And what do you think sets your team apart? I mean, there's a million mortgage brokers out there. What is extra when we come here?
Well, the testimonials that we get from our clients, because I could talk all day, but it's really the testimonials that we get from our clients. And those testimonials say things like we care, things like they're always available, for they call, they'll communicate, they'll call me back. That's a big one. They'll actually call me back. They'll, and one of the few comments is the interest rates, because we always give great rates. They're very competitive, but that comes up rarely. It's more of they communicated with me, they navigated through me, they helped me through the process. They made it so that there weren't surprises that came up.
Right. And home ownership and mortgages it can be very stressful.
Right.
Extremely stressful, just within.
It's so intimidating.
Yeah, to have a partner that can help bring a little bit of and reality and knowledge and experience and say, hey, we've got you. That's really handy.
And that's what the team really does. The team is outstanding at that because they've been in the business, they know it, and they really are articulate and extremely well with our clients.
It's like a fun place to work.